Welcome to Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 200. Yes, I said 200. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We answer your questions on running and operating your computer repair business. Call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. The Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by FreshBooks, the simple, pain-free invoicing solution for freelancers and small business owners. Try it free at freshbooks.com/Podnutz. Now let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Marvin Bee from MB Systems. How you doing, Marvin?
Cowboy.
Jeez.
I'm doing pretty good. Welcome
Awesome,
to
man.
the show.
Oh boy, here we go. And also joining us today, we have John Dubinsky from the MavenGroup. How you doing, John?
I won't sing. I'm locked and loaded, ready to go.
Awesome, man. And joining us today, we have a newcomer to this show. We have Tom Wilmot from Wilmot Computer Solutions. Tom, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, gentlemen?
Very good. Glad to have you on the show, man.
Thanks.
All right. And let's see. John, why don't we go ahead and start off with you if you're locked and loaded, ready to go.
Ready
And
to launch.
let's talk about maybe a tip or a story that might help the audience out.
I guess I'll just fall back on a little bit of a story. Was part of a team that was doing a rollout for a school system, smaller school system on one of their network segments. They have a 50 gigabyte incoming internet connection. The connection type's really not important, and they're using managed Meraki gear throughout their school system, which is very nice. If you can afford it, it's pretty awesome. Point of the story is they did an upgrade, and they went to a 100 gigabyte connection.
Ooh.
So I'm wandering around in the office after this happened, and I'm asking the ladies in the office, well, how's the new internet? And they're like, well, we don't notice any difference. It's not any different. So I'm not the router guy. I don't even have access to it. So I call up the guy, just to give him a heads up that, hey, nothing's changed here. The ladies, they say they still have the same problems. It's not any faster. They're still having problems on their VoIP phones, blah, blah, blah. So he says, well, I'll log in and take a look and call you back. So he calls me back and he says, oh, the internet connection, the WAN speed was limited. It was set to 50 gigs. So even though they had 100 coming in, the router was limited it to 50 gigabytes.
Huh.
So he said, oh, I fixed that. I just turned it up to unlimited. I just set it to 0 so it doesn't care. So I hung up the phone with him and said, great. But then I started thinking about it, and I called my buddy, because on some of this managed gear, it's important that you do rate limit your internet connection, and here's why. So we went from 50 to 100. While on a smart gear, when you're using a voice over IP phone system, there are certain protocols, let's just pick on QoS, that will manage that system. So if the router realizes that it's getting close to using all of the 100 gigabytes it has available, it will start moving some of that data for QoS to make the VoIP work better in other aspects. So, it's important that, I guess the moral of the story is just to, manage or make sure you're keeping track of the little things on your network that can make a big difference to your end users and really reduce your support calls. So the proper setting on that router is 100 gigabytes, not 50, not unlimited. So
Okay. And for those that don't know, QoS basically stands for quality of service, and it basically means you can shape the traffic to go to a workstation, to a VoIP or whatever, any of these different types of things, and you can say how much bandwidth each of those will get. And you can get down to the nitty gritty pretty good with those. And
I think you said the perfect
stuff.
line right there. You said shaping the traffic, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening. But you also have to let your gear know what it has to deal with so it can shape that traffic for you.
Yes. And a lot of them are actually smart, especially the more expensive ones.
Absolutely.
They're smart to do it themselves, and they know kind of where they need to be with certain things. So cool. All right. And Mr. Marvin B., what do you got for us today?
Well, I got pretty much just a regular tip. I have one of my law firms has Outlook that integrates with their case management system, and it's really Exchange, but to the users, it's Outlook. So I was contacted by a user who's been having trouble for a while. And when I mean a while, meaning a few months.
Oh, wow.
But come to make a long story short, there's another tech involved who was supposed to be working on this. And for the lack of a better phrase, he didn't do squat, even though he told the user that he did. So I finally look at it, and I basically spend a little bit of time trying to troubleshoot Outlook, because basically what it was is the user has access to another attorney's calendar, and they're supposed to be able to schedule directly on that calendar.
Okay.
And first we thought it was an issue with the case management system integrating with Outlook. To make a long story short, I rebuilt the OST file, I rebuilt our Outlook profile, and then I thought, idiot, let me look at the version. And basically they're using Outlook 2010, but it had never been updated with service packs.
Oh, okay.
So I downloaded and installed Service Pack 2, worked just fine. So again, this is a tip in the sense that normally on a network that I manage completely, I'm usually aware of all the software installations, all the versions that they're on. But in this particular case, I haven't been paying attention to it. I oversee the server side of the network. I oversee the VPN portion, but not the desktops. And so if you're managing desktops, Outlook's, 2010 Service Pack 2 has been out quite a while. And I think that there's other users at that company that has troubles and probably can be fixed with just a Service Pack update.
Now, why wasn't the Service Pack automatically being updated? Is that something?
Well, on a lot of systems, you can choose if you're using WSUS or some other programs, you can choose whether you just want to install, security updates, critical updates. Service packs are a separate category.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases, companies don't want service packs installed until they're tested.
Gotcha.
But again, I'm not managing the desktop side of this, so I haven't really paid attention.
Gotcha.
Although now I'll probably go in and force an update to the remaining computer. I have no idea how many computers, don't have that latest service pack, but Monday I'll go in and take a look and see if I need to push it out.
Isn't a service pack normally just a roll-up of the security fixes and other things all into one?
Sometimes, but a lot of times not. A lot of times there can be other things built in to the service pack that are, core related to the program. I think we get used to thinking that they're roll-ups, but if you pay attention to the Microsoft packets now, I mean, a lot of those updates will say roll-up as a part of their updates. So Microsoft's going to that. I'm sure that as we move to the subscription model of Windows, a lot of that stuff will be rolled up. I think we, Dubinsky, did we see a notice last month or the month before that where they're talking about Windows 10? Each monthly update will now be accumulation of all the previous updates.
You're supposed to, yeah, that's the way it's going to start working out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Hey, John, is your microphone up?
Yes, it is. It just is in the chat. I am a professional.
And I thought I was the rookie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Tom. Hold on, let me get this out of my back.
And the new guy speaks. No, that's good. Tom, I know you had a couple of stories to share with us that you feel would help people out. So go ahead and share those stories.
Yeah, so the story I have goes to BitLocker encryption on consumer hardware without a TPM module. So I have a client who's runs an accounting firm out of their home, and I spoke to this in Podnutz Daily a few weeks ago. But after that, I still had to do 3 more of his machines. He has, I believe, 6 total in his home. At the tax season, he hires a couple people on, and they come in and help do all the taxes they have. So I did 2 of his machines remotely the BitLocker setting up the encryption. You have to go into group policy and make it enable the additional password at login. So went ahead and did that, and 2 of his 3 machines, after you go in and set that, you have to initiate a reboot, and then upon reboot, that's when the encryption starts. Well, 2 of his 3 machines didn't come back up to the login screen for the BitLocker password. So I was like, oh man, this is not good. But I told him, after troubleshooting with him for about a half hour, I figured there was nothing I was going to be able to do. So I would have to come the next morning. So did a little research that night and went over there first thing in the morning. And I was luckily able to, within 10 minutes, get them logged in. Looking at a bunch of different forums, seems that people do have this problem at times. And basically what you have to do is just enter the password blindly. You won't see anything. Sometimes the screen will be just light blue. Sometimes it'll be squiggly, look like a bad video card. You just enter the password blindly and it goes right in.
Wow.
So,
okay. That's a great tip right there. I would have never thought of that myself. Okay.
yeah. So that's one reason why if you're running a business, you really want to be using business hardware, not the consumer level stuff, because the business hardware would have the TPM module. You wouldn't have to add that password and never would have had this problem.
Now, what does the TPM module normally do?
The trusted platform module, it stores the encryption, the key.
Okay.
So when you log back in, it automatically enters it, so you don't have to enter it. Is that correct, guys?
Yeah, that's a great simple explanation of that. It's basically what's handling the encryption for you, the encryption key for you. There are 2 caveats to that. Keep in mind that on some business class equipment, you can still buy a business class computer that does not have a TPM module built into it. You can add a TPM module to a computer if it has the 12-pin socket on the main board. Some do, some motherboards do, some motherboards don't. Tom's right, though. Consumer gear is probably not going to have that. But there is no like TPM add-in card that you can throw into a PCI slot or something like that. I wish there was, but there's not.
See, it's funny because I've had TPM modules probably since at least, I want to say around mid-2000s, maybe later 2000s. Ever since they pretty much, on all the motherboards I buy and build my own machines, they've all had TPM modules that I don't think I've ever used. So,
and you really never had to, because you never really had the BitLocker available unless you had Windows 7 Ultimate, or now Windows 10. It's readily available.
Which I did, but I just
right.
I encrypted my drive one time, and that was enough for me. I'm not doing whole drive encryption again. But yeah, that's another story. Okay. And Tom, you said you had something else too that you were talking about. Another tip on there.
On the TPM module, or just on some of the machines that I've been reloading?
Some of the machines you've been reloading with the updates.
Yeah, the Windows 7. That's still if you're doing fresh reloads on Windows 7, that's still an issue with getting all those updates. You'll just on the fresh reload, you'll just sit there. Windows Update will just take forever. I know there's a couple different ways to go about it, but I've got I think if you put a link in the notes, there's just 2 knowledge bases that you have to install, one right after the other. You disconnect the computer from the internet, install one, reboot the computer, install the second one, reboot the computer, initiate the internet connection again, and then you can go ahead and do Windows updates, and then you'll get about I think it's about 250 updates you'll get then after that.
Okay. What I've been doing for mine is when I'm doing a Windows 7 reinstall, I've got a external hard drive that has the WSUS files already on it. I keep it up to date about once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I plug that into a machine that's normally sometimes connected to the internet, sometimes it's not, but I really haven't had any problems with getting the updates. Once that updates, I pull that drive, I'm able to go to Windows Update, and then it seems like it finishes off. I don't know if it's a couple hundred, but I guess it depends on when you last had that image from all the downloaded files.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, cool. Good tips as usual. Yes, yeah. You shouldn't have to go through all this trickery. I know you made a comment about, is this Microsoft's way of moving people forward? And Yes. Oh, do you hear that? The black helicopter going overhead right now. Yes, the conspiracy theorist would tell you that is probably I'm telling you right now, Microsoft is not even thinking about that, okay? They don't have a department that sits there and goes, how can we move people to Windows 10? And if you think they do, I have a bridge to sell you. Anyways, another side story.
How much?
Not the bridge to Canada. We'll be waiting on that a long time.
Oh, no, we're not doing that ever again.
Come on. I like the Ambassador Bridge.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. All right. Let's see. I've got a couple of tips from the Podnutz Dailies over the last couple weeks that came through from our good friend Liam Tidwell over at Liam Tech. And the one, somebody was asking about a Mac password, or it might have been in a chat room, I'm not sure. Somebody was asking about a Mac password and they had to re-enter it over and over again. This was from one of our callers. And what Liam has done in the past is he's used a on-the-fly programmable keyboard for typing in a password that he has to do over and over again. So you can, and I didn't think about this, and I've always had the higher-end keyboards, but you can get a keyboard that you can do macros, which means you can do a multiple key presses using one key. And so you can set up your keyboard so that you can basically put that password in under one key press. So instead of actually manually going in and putting that password in for the Mac every time, obviously you'd have to use an external keyboard and plug it in, but you would be able to hit that button and just go, and every time you're doing an update, go ahead and put that password in. So I thought that was a clever out-of-the-box solution that I quite honestly did not think of. So thank you, Liam, for that. And then on one of the Podnutz Dailies, and I can't remember where we were talking about this, but we were talking about, I know, it was with Joe, and it was the Q&A database. And Liam actually has done a Q&A database in emulation mode on a newer machine. So he was actually able to get the Q&A database to run using emulation, because I think that was on a Windows, I want to say Windows 98 was what Joe was telling us. And, obviously you still got to chuck the CRT monitor. If you haven't listened to Podnutz Daily, it's Podnutz Daily 464. You can listen to the whole conversation over there. But
are you talking about the old Symantec database software?
No, this was for it was basically a color picker database for a hardware store for their paint.
Okay.
And it was a database to keep all the information, all the client information and everything right in there for all the different variations of paint and the different mixtures to come up with the colors. So they were using an old Windows 98 machine that was basically dying, obviously. And I think what Joe ended up doing was he actually converted the database into something more modern, and the client was kind of kicking and screaming and didn't want to invest in another machine and all that kind of stuff. But that's what they did. But I thought this was it's a good idea to, if you can use emulation mode via Windows 7, Windows 10, I think that's a great solution. Or I don't even think he used the mode in there. I think he used one of these other emulators, and I can't remember which one he had said. But anyways, pick your flavor, put it in emulation, and you should be able to still use older databases and software sometimes. All right. And tell you what, if nobody has any more stories, we're going to give you guys a sneak peek into some of the things that are going on behind the scenes. All right. And we're going to give you, matter of fact, your very own Marvin Bee has a wonderful announcement for some of those that have been talking about this for years. Over to you, Marvin.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this week is going to be the return of the king, the incomparable, the immeasurable. You know him as Mr. Podnutz Pro. Matthew Rainey is going to be coming back with Podnutz Pro. He'll be joined by myself and Mr. Geekster, Martin Obando, who will be doing our first taping of the Podnutz Pro later this week. So Podnutz Pro will be back on the air within a week.
Now, are you guys gonna do that pre-recorded, or are you gonna do it live, or how are you gonna do that?
We're gonna do pre-recorded.
Okay. And then
We're just gonna start out just talking amongst ourselves, and we'll play with the format a little bit, because one of the things is we're in 3 different time zones. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we can all get on the same page.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. So Podnutz Pro is coming back.
Yep. So it will be back in audio format only. No live video or anything like that just yet. And I think it's going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. So definitely check that out. It's on the Podnutz Network. And I'm sure as soon as that goes live, I think, I might be mistaken, but I think you can actually go, if they're going to use the same feed, I think you can go subscribe to that same feed.
Yeah, same feed, same name, same everything.
So if you guys subscribe now, as soon as a new episode comes out, you'll be the first to know. So definitely go to podnutz.com and check out Podnutz Pro. Or use your favorite podcatcher, or iTunes if you must, for those iPhone users out there. We love iPhone users, really, we do. I'm just kidding. I know most techs carry iPhones, and that's cool. We love you too. Anyways, so what that means is, and people are probably asking the question of what's going on with this show, and obviously there's a lot of different changes and things coming about. And so I want to let you guys know that Marvin will be doing the Podnutz Pro, and so you're probably going to see him less on this show. So that's okay, because obviously it's a lot of work to do multiple shows, and I get that. So anyways, if you want to see Marvin, he'll be on Podnutz Pro. And I'm sure they'll be coming out with on a weekly basis with a brand new show. So I'm sure that's their plan. Yep. And they'll get that going. And it'll be probably I guess the Podnutz Pro is going to be more probably the business side of things, as far as servers and networks and the things that Marvin is really a guru in, and the things that he knows. Same thing with Matt Rainey and Martin Obando. He does a lot of big networks and stuff too. So I think it'll be a phenomenal show of those guys sharing not only in the trenches, but different things that are going on in their respective businesses as they go through those trials and tribulations. So you'll probably see him less on this show. And also, to let you guys know, Chris Carruthers will be back probably sometime in the future, but he's taking a little hiatus right now because he's got some personal issues that he needs to deal with in his family. And I don't want to go into all what that is, because I didn't ask him permission to share. But if he gives me permission at some point or wants to come on and share about that, he absolutely can. Everything's good so far. He's just got other things he needs to deal with family-wise that are more important than doing a show. So I told him, I said, hey, why don't you take a little break, and then whenever you want to come back, you can come back in, and then whenever you've got that time and everything, then all that stuff will work out for him. So anyways, so we've got John Dubinsky has stepped up and said he will help out, and so you'll probably start seeing John a lot more lately. Sorry. And then the other thing is, we love having you. I love the view of your complex there. Thank you. Seeing the cars whizzing by. It's just a unique view. And for those that don't know, John's in Grand Rapids, which is a very affluent area of Michigan. And he's in this super high rise. It's very, very windowy, and it's got all kinds of windows around. And yeah, he's a high roller. Yeah.
Pretty much.
But anyways, so John will be here, and then I'm not going to announce who the other person is at this point, but here in the near future, as soon as we figure out exactly when this transition is going to take place, we'll probably have somebody else coming in to fill also Marvin's shoes. Not as well as Marvin, but maybe. Anyways, it's always good to change things up, and I think the uniqueness of the shows is going to make it something nice. And people have really been asking for Podnutz Pro and saying, hey, we want Podnutz Pro, bring it back. We want Matt Rainey stories. And
I was going to say, yeah, let's get the truth out. They really just want to have Matt back in his stories. And so Martin and I are just kind of there to you know, when
I think you guys.
when Matt gets a little tired and needs a little, you know, drink of water, we'll fill in some spaces there.
Yeah. I think you guys, the stuff that you guys do will be perfect for that show, though. And I think it'll be a nice round table of techs that do the same types of things and can talk about stories from the trenches. So I'm excited about it. I will be re-adding it to my feed as soon as we get all done with this podcast. All right. So I think that was all the announcements and tips and tricks I had for today. Let's take a quick break for our sponsors, and we will come back with our main topic. Our show today brought to you by FreshBooks. It is the simple cloud accounting solution designed for small business owners to painlessly send invoices, track time, and capture expenses. Save time for most computer repair shops. It's the very thing that always seems to be in short supply. Tons to do and never enough time to get it all done. The good news is our friends over at FreshBooks feel your pain and have created something to help you reclaim some of your precious time and be more productive. FreshBooks has created an amazingly simple invoicing solution for small business owners who need to focus on their work, not their paperwork. Owning the invoicing is only the beginning. FreshBooks keeps all your cash flow details in one place so you know exactly what invoices you sent, when you sent them, who's paid you, and who owes you what. Their mobile app lets you take pictures of your receipts and organize them for later, which makes claiming expenses at tax time a breeze. It only takes about 30 seconds to create a really professional looking invoice. FreshBooks can even show you whether or not a client has looked at the invoice you've emailed. You can also call their helpful support line and you'll get to speak to a human right away. No phone trees and no annoying pre-recorded messages. Yes, thank you. I will take more of that. The best is FreshBooks will definitely streamline how you manage this stuff on a day-to-day basis, but you'll also find that as tax time comes, you'll be so much more prepared and way less stressed. FreshBooks is offering you a free 30-day trial to try it out with no credit card required. Go to freshbooks.com/podnuts and enter Podnutz in the How Did You Hear About Us section. We want to thank FreshBooks for being a sponsor of the Computer Repair Podcast. All right, so the main topic for today, and this comes from our good friend Marvin Bee, and he actually came up with this last week, and he'll probably recognize it. And he says, you can't give good service if you sell a lousy product. Do you sell vendor specific or just the cheapest you can find? eBay, anyone? Don't let them buy their own stuff. So I think there's some good key points to this, but I think that's a great statement. You can't give good service if you sell a lousy product. If you're selling cheap stuff, the chances are you're going to be fixing that stuff a lot more. And therefore, your return on investment, to use a term, is going to be that much less than what you could be doing. Because obviously there's things you can do with your time. And what I've always said and what I've always done from my perspective is certain things like when I'm replacing a hard drive, you will never, and I did it back in the day, you will never see me put a cheap hard drive into a laptop or desktop computer. Matter of fact, I only sell 2. For desktops, it's going to, and we're talking about spinning drives here. We're not talking about SSDs because that's a whole nother realm. But as far as the spinning drives, you're talking about for a 1 terabyte, which is still my sweet spot and is fine for most people, even if you're a gamer. For a spinning drive, Western Digital Blacks. And number 2 would be the Hitachis, the HGSTs, the 2.5 inch for laptops, 1 terabyte, 7,200 RPM. I do not ever put a 5,400 RPM drive into a laptop. There's no need. The 7,200 on those smaller ones, especially the Hitachis, are so much more efficient anyways. They work much, much better and consume a little bit less energy than even the cheap ones that they put in there that are spinning all the time because they're spinning at 5,400 RPMs, and they got to keep that sucker going to get the information. So, but that's just one of the things I do. And the reason I do that is because guess what? I never have callbacks. Those drives will last until that computer dies most of the time. Actually, I've had maybe one, and it was a Western Digital Black 500 gigabyte drive, which it was still under warranty. It's less than 2 years. They replaced it. No big deal. I don't like doing that unless the customer knows, hey, listen, you're getting a refurbished drive, especially if you're getting it in the US or Canada. Now, if you're in some other country, a lot of those countries can actually get brand new drives under the warranty, whether it's a Western Digital, Seagate, or whatever. So, anyways, but Marvin, tell me some of the things you were thinking about when you came up with this subject.
Well, the reason I came up with the subject was because I had basically in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I have customers where we have to upgrade some
Can
of
you
their
pull your
stuff.
mic in a little bit? You're sounding a little far away for some reason.
La la la.
Okay, much better.
So I've been. Now I have feedback in my ear.
Oh, I can show you how to set that up, but after the show.
Nope, you can't. So I've had a couple of customers where we've got to buy some stuff and upgrade again.
Okay.
And so most of my customers are pretty good at not arguing with me. You know, most of them are like, look, you know what we need. You know what you need to do to support us. Just get us the right stuff. And most of the time that works out just fine. Sometimes the customers are what we call price sensitive. And
better known as cheap, but okay.
Yeah. And and because of this new customer process interceptor program that I call Google and Amazon, a lot of times if they know what you're getting for them, they can go on and look at pricing themselves, and they'll do their own little tweaking and, hey, well, I can do this cheaper if we do this or if we do that. So I've had 2 situations in particular where I basically had to tell them, I can't support you if I do what you want. And I have to go into the reasons and all of that. But the bottom line is I had one customer who I gave her a quote for some workstations to upgrade her network. And basically, she decided to go out and buy her own stuff. Called me back and said, okay, I got the computers. When can you come do it? I said, oh, wait a minute. Show me what you got first. Because what I've learned is I'm not just going to show up to install something that somebody else buys.
Right.
So it turns out she had gone to some, place and purchased desktops as cheaply as she could, with the cheapest processor at the lowest price, and is a Windows Home based system.
Wow.
So I had to say, I can't support that. If you want to be on a network and be on a network the right way, can't do that. So that was one situation. And the other was a customer who I had just spent the last year fighting with them about their wireless performance. And this is a little different because it wasn't that the products we were using were horrible, but the way that they were using them meant we had to basically step up in the type of product we were using. And without getting into all the details, basically I had to upgrade the routers the wireless access points that I used, to put them on Ruckus.
Okay.
And as most techs know, Ruckus is, it is the Rolls Royce of wireless access products. They are not cheap. But what I found, and I had to do my own testing where I basically set up my own wireless network with all the different access points I could find, take my tester, test it in this room, test it down the hall, walk outside the building, test it. And you know what? Ruckus was it. Now, there may have been others that would have worked, but Ruckus I found was the best. I made them spend the money to get the Ruckus wireless for them, and they haven't had a problem since.
Nice.
And so now we're getting ready to do another project, and once again, it's a doctor's office. The doctor likes gadgets, so the doctor's been on Amazon, and he's like, why can't we just get these? And I have to tell him, I'm not supporting that. I can't support you if I let you just get whatever you want. and I know that it's not the right product for you. So what happened was I went through all these things, and basically I had remembered somewhere in one of the books I read that there was a whole chapter on this, and I found it in this book, Customers for Life. And the title of that chapter is basically the topic that you gave. You can't give good customer service if you sell a lousy product. Not exactly the topic, but very much similar in the sense that, you know, we've got to know our products, we've got to know our customers, and we've got to know what works best for them. And sometimes you can't let them dictate what you use. So that's why I wanted to bring the topic up.
Gotcha. Now, as far as, so let me ask you a question, and you might be able to pull this out of thin air, I'm not sure, but going back to the desktops that your customer went to probably a big box store, I'm imagining, and bought them off the shelf, what would have been the price difference to actually get the right types of computers? I mean, are we talking hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, a few dollars?
Well, $300 per computer.
So $600.
Which was the difference with what she got as to what I was going to sell her.
So $600, but yet not only do they not have the right operating system, because I'm imagining they have a server there at the office.
Yes.
Okay. But the experience on that machine is going to be horrible, if not from the beginning, very shortly thereafter, as far as using it on a day-to-day basis. And I'm still amazed that customers don't understand that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And they should really rely on the experts. It's not just about, because let's be honest, the profit from her buying the computers from you weren't going to make that much profit on the hardware, right?
No.
I mean, so it's really, you're looking out for the customer's best interest and saying, listen, here's what we're going to get you because you're going to be happiest with this. It's the same reason there's certain things that I won't purchase for a customer. I won't get the cheapest thing because, and again, there are certain situations where maybe it's okay to do that, but in most situations, why?
Right. It's not always about price. It's about what's going to work and what's going to last you the longest with the least amount of problems.
Exactly.
And that's how I always look at it. So from the standpoint of buying a system with a lesser processor, I don't even know about the rest of the product on the inside, the motherboard, the hard drive. You know, it's something where, you know, I know that I'm going to have to support that desktop within a year or two. Whereas if we had looked at going with my solution, there are times when I don't see those systems for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
You know, because I know what they are, I know what they do. And if I do have to support them, the support time is less.
Yes. And yeah, so overall, they're spending more money up front, but less money over the whole length of time that they have those computers. That'd be a fair assessment?
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about the entire maintenance cost.
Yeah.
No, because the upfront cost technically is going to be about the same because I did give her another quote to upgrade those systems to the professional version and to do some other stuff. And, you know, she's got to pay for the upgrade because that's not free anymore because, you know, Windows 10 is not free anymore. So I don't know what that cost is, $100 per. And, you know, I'm charging $150 per computer on top of the installation so she's already at $250 per station.
Right.
Just to make what she has work. So she's spending almost the same amount of money, but she's still not going to get any better, you know, warranty out of it. It's still going to have to be maintained, you know, more than the system I would have gotten her.
Exactly. Yep.
Usually at this point I step in and I got to, you know, have a little honest conversation with them, and you kind of say something like, you know, is this how you run the rest of your business? Is it okay? Example, I'll just bring my own brakes to my auto repair customer and you guys can put them on from AutoZone and then you can warranty and take care of them, even though, I mean, they're cheaper than what you're putting on. Yeah. It's all good, right? Same difference, right? You know, same, it's, you know, you got to put it in something that they understand, or, you know, I'll do a little home dentistry, come in and then you can fix it up. take it. But remember, you got to take care of it. And if I have any problems, I expect to be seen tomorrow morning first thing. So when you kind of lay it out in like easy terms that they can understand from their perspective of their business and how they would want their customers to treat them, most of the time I get a little aha look, like, especially when you're only talking about what B's talking about, a couple $100. It would be different if B was coming in and saying, well, we need to spend $3,500 per PC,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a point where it gets a little bit ridiculous, but I mean, it's just not that difficult to explain. And once they get it, they're like, you're right.
Well, most are, and again, this is an attorney,
right?
So the example that I use with attorneys is, will you let somebody just come in with some forms they, printed off the internet, changed out their company name for, their
absolutely
what was on the thing, and all they want you to do is sign it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're way ahead of me. Yeah. Oh, I found this on the internet. It said legal. Right. We're good, right?
Legal Zoom. I buy the form. It's the same one you use. Can you just sign it for me?
And then I always follow it up. You just take that conversation a little bit further to put it into their pain threshold and say, and you'll just take care of all this, right? If it doesn't work out.
Right.
Yeah, you'll just take care of it on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, or depending on the type of lawyer or doctor, you could say something to the effect of, hey, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. Let me try your next case for you, or let me look at your next customer that walks through the door.
That's right.
let me do their paperwork. I can do this. I've watched you do it since I've been here.
It's kind of funny because I've had a couple clients where I've had them long enough, or even like I might know the staff well enough. I'm thinking of one lady I deal with who works for the owner of the company, and every time he travels a lot, I get this little email from her or a text from her with a smiley face that says, Mike's traveling this week, because that means next week we're going to get a bunch of emails about everything tech related he read in the airline magazines that we need to be doing. So we have a little ploy where we just kind of ignore, or she'll say, yeah, we'll check into that. And then we just kind of ignore it because he's really busy. So it usually doesn't fall back. But way back in the beginning, we used to react to all of it. And it's
sure.
Like, and now you're just like, just let it roll.
Yep.
Let it roll. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, at least he's wanting to know what's going on.
It's not all bad. You do want some feedback, because obviously the people that are running their business know a lot more about it than I do.
Sure.
Even B's knee deep in the lawyers and all that, but he probably doesn't know all the prosecutorial law changes or regulations that come all the time that they might face. So, some feedback is great, but don't throw in an access point. Don't buy some Linksys gear and screw up my network and
right.
Do a cross link and make me come out and tell me nobody did anything. Just, that's why I'm here. Let me fix it.
Well, in talking about lousy products, how many times do you have a customer that has bought a cheap machine at any time in their business, or even from a residential standpoint, and complains about that machine being so slow, not taking forever to do this, taking forever to do that? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that same statement. It's like, listen, if you would have spent a couple $100 more, we're not talking a lot.
I think a lot goes back to your first statement about hard drives. I'm just working on an HP laptop, Core i7, 16 gigs of RAM, 17-inch screen, beautiful machine, 5,400 RPM hard drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Because they get them in bulk, they're cheap,
yeah.
And nobody really wants to pay initially from the get-go when they're buying that stuff for an SSD, because you can usually a little bit cheaper replace the SSD after the fact, or put it from a spinning to a SSD after the fact for not that much more money. Tom, what do you think? Do you?
Yeah, as far as a little bit of knowledge of the customers when they have is just it's terrible, as they say, because like you say, they see something cheaper and they want to go the cheap route. I think that's technology getting better and better, prices coming down. That's part of the problem. But as far as SSDs go, you were talking about that a little bit. The only ones that I would use are the Samsung Evos.
Right. Yeah. No, Samsung Evos are they're probably up there. Now, John, you've switched over to a different SSD. Speaking about different brands.
I've been using the SanDisk SSDs, which are Western Digital now, but
Okay.
I've been happy. It's not that I dislike the Samsungs. I think they're great too. I've just had really good luck with the SanDisk, so I like the knife in the
No
bag.
Kingston. No, nobody's
What's
using
that?
No Kingston. Nobody's using Kingston.
No, and that's a good point too about what you said about putting the SSD in afterwards. Because even with if I have Dell build something and I say, okay, go ahead, Dell, toss an SSD in for me in the build, and then I get it. It is usually some weird Toshiba SSD that's really hard to find firmware for. That doesn't seem like it's really well supported. So there are instances where sometimes I say, well, let's build it and then we'll do it ourselves, even though the Dell warranty won't cover it. Depends on your situation, but
yeah. Again, are you going to get the longevity out of having a proper or a more brand name SSD? Again, let's face it, and we have to realize this too. The margins on hardware is so small for these manufacturers, whether you're buying this stuff one off or you're buying it in bulk. So if they can save literally a couple pennies off of getting a big bulk of these cheaper drives, they're going to do that because what it does is it pads their bottom line what little they have already. I mean, I can't fault these guys for the way that they do business. Unfortunately, what I fault all of us cheap people that won't pay for proper things. That's really what I fault.
And I'd say the biggest thing that guys that are running support for business networks, small or large, is it's very important to put in at least a base level quality of router and switching. And I'm not talking really expensive, but if you're going to throw in a little plastic blue and black box, that's where you're going to get those calls that, oh, we need to restart the router all the time, or we're going to do all that. You got to be, and I'm not saying you need a SonicWall TZ350. You don't have to spend $1,000 on the box, but a $39 router to manage even a 5 or 10 endpoint network is not enough. I mean, get them a business class router of some kind, a Cisco small business, You don't have to know. It's nothing different. It'll still have a GUI interface, but it'll be better supported. You'll get better firmware. It's just, it's not going to cost the customer that much more, that sort of thing. And you're going to just, in the long run, it's going to be better for you and for them. Their uptime, less support calls for you.
Now, let me ask, because this is a really good question, talking about equipment. Now, a business class router, in your opinion, and any of you guys can speak up that are putting these in businesses, whatever type they are, what is the longevity on each of these routers on average? What would you say that, how long can they last before they actually are normally replaced?
Well, that's kind of a trick question in my opinion, and I'll give you my 2 cents, and I'm sure B and even Tom, Tom will have some feedback too. It really depends on what you're getting. If you're getting a router that's just a board inside of a box, meaning all it is a circuit board in a box, it's really going to depend on the manufacturer and how they support that with firmware and updates. If you get something like a Calyptix router or a SonicWall, it's more advanced, that might actually have a legitimate processor or a hard drive and memory in there, and that organization is regularly supporting and updating that. Like a lot of the Calyptix routers we do, they automatically replace them every 3 years as part of the subscription. We get new hardware.
Okay.
So, like a lot of the Cisco small business gear we used to roll out is now end of life, and it's purely because they're not updating it anymore, because a lot of the software built into those routers is open source. So if that's not supported anymore, or if they want to go a different way with what they're using, that's when you'll see the end of life. Like a really popular one we did was the RV042G for a micro office, because it had some nice VPN in it, and it would nice if it was a small office for 3 or 4 endpoints, because I could hook that into either a SonicWall or a Cisco ASIC or something higher end without any problem. But in my opinion, you got to watch that. But I would suggest if you're not getting regular firmware updates, like if the firmware on that unit hasn't been updated in over a year, that's probably when I say we probably need to look somewhere else. And that's why you also need a small business router, because you put a $39 router in, you may never see a firmware update for that device.
Right.
And your router needs updated just like a PC, because it does things like SSL and security and all that it needs updated as well. So, can I answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. Marvin?
B?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, they're going to, the business class routers are going to last longer. And usually they have to, because they're, even doing more than what John said. If you're just talking about SSL security, a lot of the ones that I get are also doing the gateway antivirus, the intrusion prevention, the internet content filtering, application filtering. So they have to be updated on a regular basis. And, that you're going to want a quality router to do all of that. A lot of mine are actually coming end of life now that we're going to have to be upgrading them, just, because I'm not going to leave an unsupported router in at a client location. So for my business customers, if that router isn't supported by the vendor, meaning I can't get support for it by calling somebody, or I can't get a replacement router, or stuff can't be ordered for it anymore, then that router's got to go. I've got to have something in place, in operation, that is under support.
And now, how old are those routers that are coming end of life right now?
Some of them are, we're talking between 5 and 7 years.
See, that's a long and I guess that's
a long time for routers.
It is a long time.
Yeah.
Because even I've always bought higher end home-based routers. But, I've got a Linksys router now that has a processor and RAM and all kinds of stuff on it. And they still haven't updated the firmware, I don't think, since I bought it. And I look at these things, and it works perfectly fine for what I need. Actually, probably better than the $50 router. But I don't think I've ever gotten past 5 years on a consumer router. And again, we're not talking $50 routers. I'm talking, 150 plus, usually a couple $100 for a router. And so a lot of times I've looked at these things, and usually here's what's happened to me. So about year 4, the router needs to be restarted every once in a while. And usually by the end of that year 4, the router has to be restarted like either every week, or sometimes it gets to the point where it's every day. And usually at that point I go, oh, this is in the past. I don't do this anymore. If the router starts acting quirky on me, I throw it in the garbage. I go to the store or order one online, get another one immediately. But and I probably should have a backup. But anyways, in the past I've let it go. And even those higher end routers didn't last me 5 years. So I look at a lot of this stuff, no different than PCs for business. If I'm going to replace my personal PC, which is not an OEM, okay, it's built 100 times better than an OEM. That computer I still replace every 3 years. Why? Because I don't want the issues with it. I get something that's a little bit better, a little newer processor. There's not great leaps and bounds, but I'm able to do the things that I do on a regular basis. Yes, I spend money on that. And what I can't figure out is these businesses that don't want to spend probably a quarter of what I spend on a personal machine for their workstations. But anyways.
Well, remember, a lot of times people are making decisions based on their knowledge. So,
right.
In a lot of cases, businesses, consumers, or whatever, most people just simply think, well, a router is all it is just the internet connection. That's all it is.
Right.
So,
all it does.
Comcast or AT&T or whatever, that's really what I need to worry about. I don't need to worry about the router. That's not true.
No.
And the way I was able to explain it to my biggest law firms is they weren't just doing internet. They were, browsing the internet. They were uploading and downloading large case files. Right. They had a VPN between their other offices. They were doing their own mail server. And so I had to show them all the differences in the bandwidth that they needed, and just being able to show them, look, you need to have this much just in the VPN alone. Forget that you're just trying to browse the internet. You're trying to transmit data back and forth between each office. So as technicians, we need to know which routers can support how much load for the business.
Right.
Because, it's not just simply browsing the internet.
Now, how did you come up with that mathematical formulation to let them know here's the amount of bandwidth that you actually need, processing power, etc.?
Well, most of it is based on, most of it you can just get from the routers. You need to know, for instance, how much bandwidth do you have and how much do they need for regular, for instance, uploading and downloading their emails.
Okay.
If all they're doing is pushing through emails without attachments, then it's really not a huge deal. But these companies wanted to push out, 50 meg documents all the time.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
I had to explain to them, well, if you do it with this router and with this basic internet, you've got, 50 people in that office. So for about a good 30, 40 minutes, your internet's going to be slow.
Okay. That's okay.
While you're waiting for that one person
Sure.
to do that. And if you're all trying to download the same attachment at the same time, well,
Oh boy.
so, but again, a lot of the business class routers will tell you how much bandwidth you can support with VPN usage.
Okay.
With just the overhead in, for instance, gateway, antivirus, and intrusion, because you need to have enough bandwidth for your router to take the time to inspect the packets, and do its job to protect you. So that's got to be built in as well.
Right. Okay. Hey, Tom, what types of things do you do as far as, I don't know, standardizing what you sell to your customers? Do you come up with something based on, is it always based on price? Or, I mean, how do you do, I don't know your business that well.
Sure.
I would imagine you have a little bit of business in residential, a mixture.
Yeah,
So
I do mostly residential. I'm starting to get into some of the small businesses.
Okay.
The thing that I tend to see is that whenever you can separate the devices, as far as going to residential and just using that, the Comcast modem router, a lot of times people have trouble with their, the Wi-Fi, with that Comcast. So I'll tell them, let's split that off. Let's separate the devices. Let the device you got from Comcast or Xfinity, the modem, the Wi-Fi, let's just let that do the routing, and we'll add on a wireless router separate from that. A little tip to that I've found useful is when you're changing that over and you have to, instead of calling Comcast or Xfinity, I found it very helpful just to use the chat feature online, and to just tell them that I want to put it into bridge mode. You just got to make sure you have the customers, all their information. Sometimes I've gotten it done as quick as 5 to 10 minutes. Other times it's half an hour, but at least you're not sitting there talking to them. So I found that pretty useful doing that.
I don't know how many people want to do this, but the other thing that you run into is, because I used to do the same thing, I would use the modem/router that whatever company would give you. Well, now I don't do that for myself, because what I found is that extra Comcast wireless signal that they give to all customers, and it's an open Wi-Fi signal. Okay, not that I'm, again, black helicopters flying overhead. I'm not scared of somebody hacking in, whatever. But the problem is, what I found is interference from that secondary Wi-Fi in the space. So that's why, for me, in order to avoid that, what I did is I went and bought, and they're like $80 or $100 or whatever. I bought it's basically a dumb cable modem. It's a Motorola, whatever. It doesn't matter.
The Aris.
Yeah, one of the Motorola Aris, yeah. Anyways, it was whatever the most expensive one they had. I don't know. Anyways, so that's what I bought. And not because it was most expensive, but for the bandwidth and stuff that I needed, that I was paying for through Comcast, it's the one that I needed. So I looked on a box and figured it out. So I pull that in because it's just a dumb modem. All it does is pass the signal through. There's nothing to configure. You don't have to do anything with it. It's just a pass through for the signal to turn it into your internet. Then you take that and you go to a router, a proper router, and you hook that up, and you do the Wi-Fi there if you want to do a guest network or all that kind of stuff. I've just found there's less problems with that versus having that secondary Wi-Fi, not only in your own house, but everybody on your street. You've got all these extra signals that are constantly fighting. So,
well, we actually we request the gear that Comcast installs out on our installs, because a lot of their gear will not work for a lot of the VoIP clients and other things that when they install it. Like their new Cisco gear does not work.
Okay.
So we have to we request either a Netgear Gateway, which is an older piece of gear they use, which works great for everything, but is getting scarce, or we have to use what's their SMC Gateway, which works pretty good. But the Netgear is the one that gives us the fewest problems.
Okay.
A tip on the routers when you want to upsell your customers, if you can, here's a great example. Just had a conversation just like B with a customer. Well, why do we need this? I can go to Best Buy and buy a router for $100. Why do I have to spend close to $430 a month? I don't understand. So I just diddy-bopped over there, switched out their router with a managed router, and literally I turned it on. We sat there for 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes from the console on the managed router, I was able to show her that we had been attacked 127 times, and the router had already blacklisted 4 IP addresses, two or three from out of the country, 1 from in the country, where some of these attacks were coming from. So, most people don't realize it until they visualize it, what's happening, on the other side of that little box and what is coming into your network. I'm just looking at my router right now as we're talking. And I'm looking at, I got five temporary IPs blocked, 410 attacks today, so what's happening just on my little network, what's trying to knock on the door and get in and what it's looking for. If nobody knows
me,
what...
I'm sorry. I'll stop.
And if somebody wants to, and I'll put all this stuff, I'll put some router options in there. If somebody wants to know about network intrusion and detection, they can look at a product called Snort. It's open source, or it used to be. I think it might be going closed source now, commercial. I'm not sure, but it's snort.org. I'll put that in there. I'll put a bandwidth calculator link in the chat notes too. The other question I have, B, is what do we think about SonicWall since Dell's rolling them out to some private equity or something? We think we're still good there?
I'm going to
maybe
wait.
Better?
I'm going to wait and see. I'm hoping it'll be better in the sense that they'll stop calling me with their war room. Hey, your subscription's about to expire. If you don't renew it, we'll call your customer on your behalf. And I'm like, no, you won't.
Right.
The other part. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So yeah, but they've just rolled out a whole new line. So you mentioned the TZ. It's not the TZ 350, by the way. There's a TZ 300, the TZ 400. For the guys that want to start off, there's a TZ Soho. And I'll probably end up staying with SonicWall. They've been good for me for almost 15 years. So I don't have a reason to go away from them outside of the fact that I am looking. I do want the ability to manage more from one console. I have a GMS appliance now that I'll need to get rid of next year. So I'm looking at the alternatives for that. They have the GMS software that I can install on my own server. I just don't want to do it on my own server. So, but I'm going to stick with the SonicWall routers. I like them. I am going to step up to the NSA series because you don't have any attorneys, right?
No, I have no attorneys anymore. Nope.
Well, my law firms, the ones that are insurance defense firms, have now been getting letters from their clients, which are the insurance companies, saying, as we use you for our legal counsel, we need to know that your network is secure. So they're now telling us that we've got to have everything in place with their data, their backup, their encryption, and that all of their remote access has to be VPN. So we're upgrading our SonicWall so that they can do the SSL VPN remote encryption. So
it should be that way anyways. Why? It's amazing you have a third party that's telling them that they need to do that when really...
well, it's the same thing with HIPAA for medical. A lot of that, that has with the medical, a lot of people think that's all about medical data, and it's great and all that, and it is. If I remember the HIPAA law, if you read the HIPAA law, isn't it like 7 pages out of all those pages is IT related?
The security 145 and all that stuff. Yeah,
but then what spews out of that 1,000-page law that of those 7 pages is all of this regulation for us to try. It doesn't say anything about how or why email has to be secure, but it says email needs to be secure is what it says in the law. So then from there, we talk about encryption, and then there's always arguments of whether an email needs to be encrypted and what does secure mean and all that kind of stuff. But it all goes back, I think you can wrap it around into the tools you use. If you have a good router, like a SonicWall or Calyptix or whatever you're going to use, a lot of the management built into those routers will help you with that. Secure VPN, blocking ransomware, more security, restricting sites, intrusion prevention, intrusion detection, all of those things that are required by all of those laws. And, and if you don't deal with any of those clients, here's a simple little catch. If somebody is under PCI compliance, most of those requirements are the same. You're supposed to have IPD and IPN and all that.
So on the business side of things, guys, do you think it's best to have things separate as far as the router and the wireless? Because I know even on the SonicWalls you can get the routers with the Wi-Fi built in, or WatchGuard with the fireboxes with the Wi-Fi built in. Do you feel it's better to have separate wireless access points and such, or is it okay to get those built into the routers?
I've always liked them separate from the standpoint that then I can change over as that technology changes. Meaning, if we start with a small network, but then I want to go up to Ruckus, I know I can disable it on the SonicWall or whatever gear I'm using, but I've then paid for something I'm not using. So I like it to be separate. It's like buying it, in my opinion, it's like buying an all-in-one computer. If you have to have that all-in-one computer because of space, or maybe it's just a kiosk or something, that's great. But I'd rather have a separate monitor, and separate components so I can replace that. Same from a security aspect, yeah, I like that too. I think it's easier to manage. I can make sure the firmware on those devices stays up. If I have to, I can totally segment that wireless onto a different network, totally, if I have to, versus just VLANing or something like that. So yes, I like my wireless separate.
Separate, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Marvin,
Now, for a micro office, maybe if you've got a really small office, 4 computer, let's say under 10, that might be all right. But I like the flexibility. Sorry, go ahead, B.
No, I was going to say, I keep everything separate as well. Even for the smaller offices, I do it separate because a lot of times, if you're buying, and here's what I do. I mean, you can get them built in as all-in-one, but what you can do, I know with SonicWall, with Fortinet, they actually come where you can manage wireless from that router, but the router doesn't have to be wireless. So like for SonicWall, they're called Sonic Points. So you can extend a wireless router to the other side of the office separate from where your internet connection and router is. So you can separate those out. I like to keep them separate because I don't like the SonicWall wireless product.
Yeah.
Bad.
I've heard that from someone else too.
Good to know. Okay. Well, so I guess to kind of wrap this all up as far as all that goes, I think you really need to think about your product line and what you're selling to your customers. And again, it's not all about the standpoint of just making money. It's the standpoint of giving your customers not only the best experience you possibly can give them with your knowledge and understanding, but also taking care of them from a security standpoint and all these different things that, yes, are going to cost a little bit more money, but not a whole lot. And I think you need to get really good at, like these gentlemen have said, on how to give that information to your customer to help them understand a little bit better of what you're trying to do for them so that they have a great experience on a day-to-day basis. Nobody wants to come in, going back to, if you guys remember the hourglass in Windows, nobody wants to come into a computer and they go to click on a program and you got the hourglass spinning and turning upside down, or the spinning beach ball on Macs if you're so affluent that you have one of those. You don't want that type of thing. I'm just kidding.
If I could add 2 cents to your comment, Jeff, I think the way I approach it from my perspective is, how do I make it easier on me?
True.
And that kind of sounds selfish, but really, if it's easy for me to fix, monitor, repair, and protect the client, their experience is going to be that much better. Now,
absolutely,
obviously, with a grain of salt. If we don't need the Cadillac, you don't put the Cadillac in. But that's really the way I approach it. What would I do in my own business? How do I make my business more secure, easier to manage, safer? Because adding more layers of security usually does not make it easier on the end user. It
Right.
makes it more complex. So we want to keep it as simple as possible, as fast to repair as possible, easy to monitor.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. When your job is easier, it's a better overall experience, and it makes your customer's life a lot easier, even though they might not realize it. Because like you said, John, you had to sit down and show them, hey, here's the traffic you got coming in. Here's the attacks on each port that are hitting this thing right now. Do you want that stuff just to, maybe come through? So that's good.
Let me ask this question, and I don't know if I think I know your answer, Dubinsky, but when it comes to customers buying their own equipment, I know a lot of techs who don't want to handle inventory. They don't want to be responsible for it. They don't want to deal with sales tax or whatever. So what they'll do is they will actually write out the part number and tell the customer to buy it, and they don't care where they buy it from, or they'll give them the Amazon link and all. I don't like doing that, because the bottom line is they're still going to call me. But I mean, are you guys allowing your customers to ever buy the product on their own? And do you trust them to buy what you gave them to buy?
That's a good point. That's a real good point.
99.9% of the time, I would suggest no. If it's a certain device, or maybe it's a one-off, like I just had a doc that needed to buy a really freaky, I can't even remember, mouse for a special piece of gear that he had. So I just sent him the Amazon link. I would suggest it's really based on the relationship you have with your customer. I have a flat fee relationship with most of my customers, retainer, whatever you want to call it, MSP. So if somebody puts in a piece of gear that I don't know about or I don't understand, that instantly generates a conversation of, hey, it's broken, I'm going to bill you to fix it. One, because you didn't tell me. Two, because you plugged it in and it broke everything. So we need to have that discussion. So I'm with you, B. I would say no, I do not like to do that. Do not like to do that at all.
Tom?
Yeah, no, I don't like the customers buying their own stuff. I do have one customer that he consistently does that. But for the most part, no, I go ahead and buy it, and for a general rule, mark everything up 20%, and that's pretty much. I feel that's my knowledge is that the price they're paying a little bit extra because of my knowledge to pick out the right item that they need.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to parts, I definitely will order all that stuff myself. And like I said, I only use certain types of parts for certain types of things. I'm probably a little, and this is from the residential side, and I would be much different in business. But I think from the residential side, when you look at when a customer wants to buy a computer, quite honestly, I will give them like a couple of suggestions and give them a price point or wherever they're at, and send them to a big box store, just because, to be honest with you, I don't really want to deal with the warranty and all that kind of stuff. I'll support it and take care of it. But these, again, from a residential standpoint, they're more of a one-off. I think in a business environment, if I'm going to support something, no, I want everything, because I've been in the business environments that have had everything collude together, from home-built machines to whatever somebody brought from home. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, especially in a domain environment, it's horrible to try to keep up with that stuff. When they have problems, you're just like going, yeah, and really? Yeah, I know you're having problems. What do you want? And so I think from that standpoint, definitely business side, I think you need to take care of that stuff yourself. I think the residential side, it could go. I probably should sell, have a certain laptop that I sell, or at least a certain manufacturer, Dell, HP. And I will tell you that sometimes customers do actually care about the brand, and the only reason they do care is because they've had a good experience with that brand. Even though I might not like them right now, but that brand, to them, they've had no problems with it. So to them, they're like, hey, I want another one. So it's probably not the best way to do it. But yeah, I've done that in the past.
I don't know if I billed hourly for every minute that I worked on something. I don't think I'd have a problem. I'd probably make strong suggestions, but if they want to buy something that breaks all the time and I get paid to fix it,
well,
I mean, you want to give honest advice, and I would give them
Right.
honest advice that I don't think this is a good idea, but maybe on the back end,
right, yeah, exactly.
it's their dollar. It's their decision.
Right.
But, you know, in a business, though, where I'm telling them I'll fix it all for this amount of money, you know, they can't cheat and just go put in whatever they want and expect me to make it work. It's the same. I think B would relate to this. It's like when the copier company comes in and puts in a bunch of machines, and all of a sudden they can't print to that equipment. I'm always the one that gets the first call. And then my first question is, well, what the copier company says, because I can see it on the network. I can ping the IP address. I can log into it. You know, your PC looks good, you know, something like that. So, you know, there always becomes those conflicts of interest. But go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I was going to say, and there's a lot of times where at the big box stores, there's always going to be some sort of sales going on. And normally what I will do is I will look and I'll tell them. I said, here, in my opinion, is the minimum you need to have for the things you do. Whether you're doing a home operated business and you're just using a laptop there, or you're doing something where if you're just checking email and you get on the internet to buy airline tickets every once in a while, maybe you need this little desktop over here or whatever. I will give them the best bang for the buck for whatever they need. And a lot of times it's probably higher than some of the cheaper stuff they can get, but I know that a lot of this equipment is going to last longer over time. And, you know, because again, yeah, you get paid to fix it, but I don't want to be that guy that's disingenuous. So I do try to give them the best bang for the buck and tell them I absolutely would not get this whatever Celeron processor. There's no reason for you to have a Celeron processor at this point when the other stuff is not that much more expensive. You get a more quality. And I always tell them too, somebody made a comment in the chat room about, you know, business end machines to consumers. And I think that's what you need to do. And the reason being, and here's what I tell people, you're going to pay a little bit more for that business machine, but the fit and finish a lot of times is a lot more robust than it is on the plasticky consumer stuff that you can buy off the shelf. And the way I explain it is, and I've seen this time and time again, if you're in your kitchen and your laptop is sitting on an island and it's one of these plastic models that you might have spent $300 for, and you knock it off and it falls on the wooden floor, generally, from what I've seen, it shatters into a million pieces. Hard drive goes flying that way, RAM goes flying the other way, and the screen's cracked all the way across the middle. They have no give. They shatter. So the difference is your business machines are going to be more robust as far as what they're made of, different plastics and metals and all that kind of stuff. The hinges a lot of times are a ton better on business machines than they are on the consumer ones. Now, I can't tell you how many people I've had come and say, hey, can you fix these hinges? And I'm like going, yeah, I could put a bunch of epoxy on it, but is that going to fix the problem? No. And here's the problem. So the screw that went in here was actually pushed into this piece of plastic that is no longer there. And guess what? They only used 4 screws, 2 on each hinge, versus 6 or 8 sometimes on the business end stuff. And to be honest with you, using just 2 more screws, 1 on each side, on those hinges makes a huge, huge difference. As far as, because what ends up happening is these springs that are manufactured are so stinking tough that when people are lifting this thing up and, you know, opening it and closing it all the time, when you get that cheap plastic, you're getting a lot more flex versus the ones that are more solid. So, and I know, because John, you've given me a couple of business class machines, and I've seen just the difference of them. Go even doing screen replacements and stuff. I'm like going, you know, at first I'm yelling at the thing because it has so many stinking screws in it, but then I understand the genius behind that. And you can drop this thing on the ground, pick it up, and you still use it.
Just dropped mine the other day out on the factory. You know, my favorite story about that is like when somebody says, "Oh, I just got a Mac. My Windows PC was crap," and I'm like, "Well, what was your Windows PC?" "Oh, a $299 red, you know, special." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you just buy a $1,500 Windows PC?"
Right.
And they're like, you know, so nobody ever thinks about that. Yes, the Macs are beautiful. Yes, they're aluminum. Yes, they're unibody. You buy the exact same thing in a PC, and you know,
right.
You can't compare a Yugo to a Cadillac.
You get what you pay for.
Amen, Tom. You got that right.
The other thing too is, you know, I tell people all the time, this is probably something I said time and time again, but when people want to buy a Mac or an iPad or whatever, and I'm like, hey, more power to you. If that's what you want, or if that's what your kid needs for school or whatever, that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to tell you is go and pay for the 3 years of Apple Care. Just it's part of the price. It's not negotiable, because here's the thing. If you go in to get those things fixed, you are going to pay a Cadillac tax. Not in every situation, because there are some things that are cheaper, but in most situations, you're going to pay a Cadillac tax in order to have that thing fixed. So, you know, even with all the different manufacturers of these other PCs, you can get the parts pretty readily for both the business class and the consumer class very easily. Versus the Mac stuff, it's a little bit tougher. So, and more
because I've got a couple of realty offices that have the Gen 1 MacBook Airs or whatever with 4 gigs of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
Now with all the OS updates and what they're trying to do, I mean, there's we can't add more. They're just stuck. They're done.
Right.
So, all right.
Anyways, any more comments on that? Since Marvin brought it up, don't let them buy their own stuff. I agree with that. For the most part, yeah. From business side, absolutely, don't let them buy their own stuff. From the consumer side, it all depends. You know, sometimes people just want me to take care of it, and I will. But even when going back to that though, real quick, what ended up happening is, even if somebody goes to the store and buys a unit, all they do is they bring it directly to me in the box, so that I can transfer their data and set it up. So I mean, it's like I'm already getting a look at the PC, and I can already do whatever I need to do to it, get it set up for them, and then I get it back to them. So it's not like they're taking it home and trying to hook it up themselves and all that kind of stuff. No, I'm properly setting these things up. So maybe that's the other thing too, why their experience tends to be a little bit better.
Well, that's where the story changes for guys like B and me, because we want to supply the computer so we can have the correct image on it, set up for their applications, roll in, warranty already registered, ready to rock and roll if they have problems, you know, that sort of thing.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
all right.
Well,
go ahead, Marvin.
I was just going to say, I did have a conversation a little while ago. One of my customers asked why it costs so much for the installation charge. And I said, well, do you really have any idea what I do for installation? We're like, well, no, don't you just buy it and come here and set it up?
Oh,
I said, oh, yeah, I do that. And I do this, I do this. I have to connect it to your network. I have to install your software. I have to set up the profile. I have to transfer stuff from your old computer. I said, do you realize how long that takes? Oh, I didn't.
15 minutes.
Yeah, that's what they think.
15
Really?
minutes.
Then you hand it to them yourselves and go, oh, you do it.
You just put the disc in.
Yeah.
So I just say, well, if you want to do it yourself, that's fine. I'll just bill you the cost of the system. I'll have it delivered directly to your office, and you do it.
Right.
Oh, well, it'll take me a week to set it up.
Yep.
Wow, how much will that cost you?
Exactly. Are you good at what you're doing? So keep doing what you're doing. Let me do what I do so that I can keep you doing what you're doing.
Yep. So let me show up for 2 to 3 hours. I'll get it done right. You don't have to worry about it again. And that's what my price is.
Yep. Yeah. And so anyways, I think we're getting down towards the end of the show. I don't know if we'll have any time for any phone calls since it's already 5:23, but let's go ahead and
squeeze one in. Come on.
If you want to call, you can call. The number is 1-888-697-0162. If you want to add your voice into the conversation, we've probably got time for one. And while we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and answer a couple of quick emails. Maybe one. We'll see. This first email is from Country PC Doctor. Love the name. It's Pete. It says, hi, Jeff. My question for you and the panel is, when do you have a lawyer review your forms? Thank you, Pete. Never. That's my answer. Next.
I'm running into that more and more right now, where with HIPAA, you have to sign business associate agreements. And if you go back when these first started, they all used to be pretty boilerplate about, in a nutshell, hey, you try to take care of our data, we'll try to take care of you. We're all friends, handshake, yay, we're working together. Now everybody in their business associate agreements, even from vendors and customers, they try to sneak in all the verbiage that says, hey, it's not our fault, it's your fault. So what I'm finding now is probably just about every BAA I get, I have to have it reviewed. And I'm passing that cost on to my customers because I'm not footing that bill.
Right.
Unless they want to sign a blanket indemnification from me, which I have. So I'll sign your BAA, but you have to sign my otherwise you have to have my lawyer review it and you can fit the bill.
Wow. Okay.
Because, I mean, there's just too much risk there because you could be signing your business away based on a mistake that you may not make. So you have to be careful. Don't just sign anything your customer's sliding in front of you.
Right. I agree. Marvin's
full of lawyers. You can.
Yeah, I was going to say you're biting at the bit right there. Go ahead.
Yeah, but a lot of my lawyers are the wrong ones. So yeah. Yeah. So I've actually had to go out and find a different lawyer to handle that stuff because again, if I have one of my clients review it, they're only going to sign it based on what their best interest is. So
sure.
I had to find a third party, non-subjective attorney that, can see both sides.
Tom?
Yes, I use the TechNibble business kit, the forms that are in there. I just modified a few of them. But may have to, getting into some more small businesses, I may have to get a lawyer to review some things, especially if the client's giving me something to sign. From my years at UPS, always have, as a union, when the company wants you to sign something, you just say RTS, and it means refuse to sign.
Oh, see, I never do that. I write in like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Mighty Mouse, Pluto,
Yeah.
So, it's funny because they don't review those forms because I haven't been caught in the last 23 years, but whatever. Yeah, I signed it. Just not with my name. Anyways, that's a whole nother side story.
Speaking of signing stuff, this isn't a story, it's a tip. So twice in the last couple of weeks, clients that I've been going to for years have all of a sudden made me present them with my business insurance and sign vendor forms just to go into their buildings now, because the buildings that they were at either got bought or sold. And so the new ownership of the business, is basically requiring any vendor, whether, they're the regular cable guy, electrician, construction guy, but even us as computer guys, I've had to go in and prove to them, that I've got business insurance and do all of that stuff. So I don't know if that's a trend that's kind of, starting, or if it's something that's down here, but I had one of my customers, she looked at me and she goes, so the building's asking for this. And, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. And I said, no, we got it. And she was actually quite shocked. And then she thought, of course, you're professional. You would have that. So I just thinking, guys, start paying attention. If you've got to go into office buildings, I think a lot of the commercial office buildings are going to start requiring, us as technicians, even if all we're doing is computer support, we're going to have to, act like other vendors and have that stuff available.
Yeah, and I think if you're supporting businesses, I think you definitely need to have that. Make sure that all your stuff is in place, business insurance and all that, because it's important. It protects you on both sides. And I'll say, as far as from the residential side, one of the things I've run into. Oh, hold on, we've got a call coming through. One sec. And this is Joe from Onsite Computers. Do we know him? All right, one sec.
On to plug his business.
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
What's that? Good. About you?
Good. So I see you're calling in here. You want to let everybody know
Yes.
What was your?
I'm not. Let me. So I don't not listening to them. Well, I was going to bring up. Hi guys. I don't know if you're listening to me.
I think they can all hear you.
What's
up, Joe?
Can they hear me?
Oh yeah, everybody can hear you.
Okay. You guys were just talking about the sonic wall routers, and you guys know that I talked about this about a week ago, but something that you can't assume is that the person that set the router up in the first place on the business class router has all the settings just quite right, because that's what I ran into. The malware detection and all that stuff was not even on the old router I replaced. This guy was paying for all that stuff for the last 4 years, and none of the detection was even on the old router that I replaced.
Oh, wow. So he had the Sonic wall, but none of the things were running on it, yet they were paying for it. Wow.
That's correct. The detection software, the spyware and the malware detection, that was all off on that old router I replaced.
Oh,
I never even brought that up last week.
that's good.
That's just technicians making us look bad.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
Hey,
yeah,
Joe,
well,
did you know the other tech, or was this just some third-party guy that was doing it, or? I mean, could it have been an honest mistake? I mean, a really bad one, but.
No, I did not know the other tech.
All right.
He went out of business a couple years ago, I guess. What the guy told me.
okay. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
You're spending thousands of dollars, but it's not actually doing anything more than my $50 Linksys router would do. Unbelievable. Well, I appreciate that, Joe. I don't know if you heard earlier, we talked about your Q&A database.
Yes, yeah. And John.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, John Dubinsky was right. Q&A was purchased by Symantec.
Oh, okay.
It's funny you say that, because I used to have a customer that used Q&A for like a Rolodex back in the day. And that's the only reason I remember that.
Wait, John, you got to explain to these kids what a Rolodex actually is.
Oh, sorry. Contact address book.
It actually sits on your desk, and it has little 3x5 cards, or what look like 3x5 cards that you can flip through, and they've got the
I'll put a
little
link.
tabs.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah,
With pictures.
your little business cards.
Yeah.
Flip it around to the one that you want.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, Joe, I appreciate your call and letting us know that, yeah, obviously, if you're going to support businesses and put this stuff in and charge them, you need to set it up properly. And if I remember correctly, doesn't SonicWall and some of these others, I know WatchGuard and different things, have like online courses that you can actually take and learn their equipment better?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me preface that. If you shouldn't probably put that gear in until you take those courses. Because like right now, I'm playing with new gear too, and I just had some training last week. And one of the primary things I told the guy that I was working with, it was just some one-on-one training, is, man, it's a little overwhelming, even compared to the Sonic walls that I'm used to or other managed devices I'm used to. There is just a lot more in this thing too. So, I'm going to make sure I'm, what do they call it, eating my own dog food and have it set up for me. I'm going to break it in my office for a little while before I park it in, to somebody's office. Because let's think positively about the guy that put that Dell in. He probably thought he was doing the right thing. He probably thought he was helping that client, if we want to be positive about the whole thing. But he just didn't know what he was doing, because he didn't, quote unquote, check some boxes, literally, to turn that stuff on. Maybe he didn't know he had to. Maybe he thought it would be the default. But there's not a whole lot of forgiveness there. But if we want to at least think positively or give them the benefit of the doubt, he just didn't do his due diligence before he rolled out something he probably shouldn't have been playing with, he or she.
Well, I'll tell you, my brother actually works for a government agency, and he works for the government. And basically, he's an electrical engineer. And he had talked about one of the managed switches that got put in. And the guy that actually came to follow up and do some different things, and I don't know if he was replacing some equipment or whatever, but anyways, the managed switch, which is supposed to route traffic to and fro and stop certain traffic from going to certain places inside this facility where it shouldn't be going, this guy basically took the managed switch. Now, it's a high-end switch, right? It's not your cheap $50 switch. It's going to be, a $1,000 switch. And he basically hooked it up and just plugged all the cords in, and that was it. There was no managing on the firmware side to get this thing to do what it is they needed for it to do inside that facility. And this stuff happens all the time. So it's not just in businesses, government, and whatnot. So, anyways. All right. Well, yeah, Rolodex. Wow. That's really old school right there. All right. Let's go around and appreciate you guys and all the.
Whoa.
What? Would you say?
How are the raccoons doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't get my updated video?
I didn't. Uh-oh. Did we spray or something or get a dog or?
No, we've got other stuff going on. So
Okay. All right.
So, for those that didn't know, Marvin Bee basically had raccoons that loved to come over to a swimming pool and swim, of which he decided to put together a video. Oh, that was a couple months ago, wasn't it?
yeah.
And
Before
so
Canada.
Ricky and his friends, yeah.
and it became a YouTube hit that just people were just loving. So it was better than the cat videos. Not that Marvin would have any cat videos. I'm just saying the cat videos on the internet. Anyways, all right.
No, so the farm is we've got a new possum out back. We got a new baby possum out there. So we're dealing with the new baby now.
Florida is not just all snakes and critters, folks. Anyways, all right, Tom. If people want to find out more about what you're up to, where could they do that?
They can get a hold of me at tom@wilmotcs.com, or I'm on Facebook or Twitter.
All right. And Mr. John Dubinsky, where can people find out more about you?
MavenGroup.net.
Yeah, man. And Mr. Marvin Bee, the newly anointed Podnutz Pro-Ian, where can people find you?
They're going to be able to come down to Florida and basically,
Hollywood.
let me see if I can pull this up properly so you can see.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Is that going there?
Yeah, leave it to a technician to try to do something technical.
Live. That's right.
Live on here. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work.
So
And
there's
he's
Ricky.
showing us a beautiful video of the
There's Ricky.
raccoon in the swimming pool.
So head on over to mbsystems.net and you'll get my phone number and we'll schedule a reservation so you can come and enjoy the pool with Ricky.
I want to swim in that pool. Oh, man. All right, come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We have audio available over at podnutz.com or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. Send your questions and feedback to podnutz@podnutz.com. If you want to leave a voicemail, you can do that at 1-888-697-0162. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters for their continued support. And our newest patron is, in this happened totally by accident, is Tom Wilmot. He is our newest Patreon supporter, and he didn't have to pay to come on the show, folks. That was free. But I appreciate the support. Please consider supporting this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast.